investors can invest in Bitcoin with significantly less risk of direct holding, and at the same time, they also have the opportunity to hedge against asset volatility using the option. So this continuation of approval actually signals the first step for the legitimacy of cryptocurrency, which used to be considered as unregulated and risky. And politically, as you may have known, the industry also received the continued endorsement of the newly elected President Donald Trump, who consistently positioned himself as a crypto president and advocate the US to become a cryptocurrency capital. And actually, I made this screenshot a few days back, but I just checked the cryptocurrency at the Bitcoin price this morning, and it hits a new all-time high at $88,000 US, and it's expected that the cryptocurrency market under Donald Trump presidency is continuing to further flourish and gain influence. And second, together with this rising influence, there's increasing demand to understanding the assets, especially after the failures of crypto exchange in 2022. Stakeholders have raised concerns about the transparency in the cryptocurrency market. And in response, the regulators, such as the Financial Accounting Standard Board, has issued the first accounting standard update on cryptocurrency in December 2023, addressing the concern that they should improve the accounting and disclosure for cryptocurrency. And earlier this year, the Basel Committee also issued the finalized disclosure framework with the same goal, that is to reduce information asset banks that have crypto asset exposure and market participants. And lastly, the reason why I choose to focus on the equity market is because of its pivotal role in the firm's success and growth. So compared to debt markets, equity market is more flexible and offer a wider financing options. And it's particularly suitable for companies which is younger, less established, and growing. And companies operating in crypto business is a typical business because they have relatively short history, which was first introduced in 2008, but accompanied by, as we showed you earlier, exponential growth in recent years. So altogether, the equity market is highly relevant in the context of cryptocurrency industry. So putting everything all together, my research question for the paper is, how does market react to cryptocurrency disclosures? To empirically analyze the questions, I take advantage of the voluntary disclosures by company, again, that are actively engaged in crypto business, and I construct a disclosure variable based on the information requirements that are mandated by the FASB. So this is just a snapshot of the requirements that the company need to disclose if they actively hold cryptocurrency. So I'm not sure if you can see from the back, but the company now needs to disclose the name of the assets, the cost basis, the number of assets held, cost method for computing gains. They have now also need to present crypto assets and the subsequent changes separately from intangible assets, and they have to report the gains and losses in the income statement.
It includes that number of assets held. So this would be then a list of different cryptocurrencies they hold.
Yes. So it could be the list of a number of cryptocurrency assets and also the specific numbers of each crypto asset.
So number of units.
Yeah.
So it's very interesting because it's different. I mean, if you think this is, for example, similar to in terms of accounting, it works differently. But if you think this is a financial asset, we do have requirements for investment funds that they disclose the list of their investments. But we don't have a similar requirement for firms.
Yes.
So it's just interesting. Also highlights the regulators' concerns that you need to provide much more information than for a regular financial investment.
Yes. So just quickly respond to your question. I'm not sure if it's a question or clarification, but actually, company also gain exposure to cryptocurrency by investing in funds. So in this case, they classify the investment as financial asset. In investment, they just disclose the fair value of the whole investment. But if the company holds cryptocurrency as part of the investment, it needs to disclose the
Yeah, just thinking of what differentiates this from other settings. Yeah, so the more you have, the better. And this is yet another point where it's
this is a very interesting topic. I'd like to introduction at the beginning a lot. So I sort of one of the I'm always curious. I'm not an expert here, but I always talk with lots of industry people too. One of the most challenging things is what is the fair value? How do you really think the fair valuation of these critical currencies? Even my co-author was advising in Wall Street, one of the largest critical currency traders. They also find this quite interesting. What's your thought? What's a professional thought in your company?
Yes, actually, that's also one of the concerns that the stakeholders raised during the issuance of this regulation, because upon its enforcement, the companies need to report the crypto assets at the fair value. And actually, one significant numbers of stakeholders raised concern that because first, cryptocurrency is not very liquid, except for the very highly liquid, for example, Bitcoin and Ethereum. So it's very difficult to judge the fair value of these assets. So in those cases that the asset doesn't have a quoted price in an exchange, the best method is to use the historical cost of the assets. So if you ask me what is the best method to determine fair value of cryptocurrency, I would still say that it's best that it has a quoted price in the exchange, crypto exchange. Otherwise, it should go back to the historical cost methods.
Well, so that's specifically stated this way.
No, well, actually, it applies for all assets now, but that remains one of the concerns of the stakeholders. But the FASB disregard this thing because they believe that at the time being, even though the company doesn't apply the fair value accounting, they still need to basically conduct impairment tests, which is essentially comparing the book value and the market value. So the company still need to, in some stage, use the fair value principle.
So that doesn't mean there's just coming back to you, that doesn't mean there's a deviation from all other fair value requirements, because fair value is defined in the whole body of the standards, and there's also this hierarchy approach. You have to rely on the market value, and of course, which exchange, there may be points on that, but so and if that's not available, then you would still try to assess the fair value, but then using some method. This is usually based on discounted cash flows, but discounted. No. So it means that sort of within this standard, they say fair value is not available. You have to use historical cost rather than trying to estimate.
Yes, and so fair value if they don't have. But that's the concerns from stakeholders, and that was disregarded by the FASB. So essentially, now companies still need to find one another way to find the fair value of the critical records. And going back to my main question, so essentially after...
Okay, just a quick question. So we are using these FASB requirements for the new standards to be effective in 2025.
Yes.
To evaluate the quality of voluntary disclosure before, right? Is that an assumption that this is how this disclosure should look like?
Oh, yes. So I think I should have clarified that. But essentially, there are two reasons. First, because the regulation, the company make voluntary disclosure, and from my observation, they make a huge variation in the level of information that they disclose. And in order to judge whether or not more disclosure about cryptocurrency is relevant, I need a framework of which items should be disclosed. And this regulation is actually providing me a perfect framework just to see, so the purpose of this regulation is to provide investors and capital allocators with more relevant and decision-useful information. So I would expect that if the company adhere to this framework, the level of relevance of the disclosure would increase.
So you're effectively testing the standard before it became effective.
Yes. So the findings of yes, please.
Sorry, just to follow up on this point, do you look at anything that's the disclosures that are not captured by the standard requirements?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
Actually, I'm gonna talk briefly
Yeah,
about
yeah, we can come back to it when you.
yeah, but I mean, in case I forget, I just touch upon that. So essentially, at the current stage, they require 7 main criteria here. But from my observation, company also vary in the impairment test frequency. For example, some company they compare it annually, quarterly, and monthly and daily. That could affect the valuation of the crypto asset in the balance sheet as well. So I account for that in the readiness test. Yes. So understanding this question is, I believe it could contribute to I would make 3 main contributions. The first one is that it would contribute to the scans and emerging literature of cryptocurrency. So as of my search in October this year, there are less than 10 publications of cryptocurrency in accounting journals. And their current focus would be on the initial fund offerings and new way of raising capitals. They would investigate the cryptocurrency risk using cryptocurrency to for tax loss harvesting or money laundering and terrorism purpose. And from this disclosure standpoint, there are 2 pioneer papers, which is Lewin, May, and Anderson, which they look at the way the company, both US-based and international, account for the cryptocurrency holding, and they document the inconsistencies in the accounting report for this company and call for the regulation. So now, one regulation in response has issued with, again, the goal that it should provide more relevant and useful information for investors. My paper actually contributes to the discussion by taking one step further by providing preliminary evidence of relevance of the mandated regulation. So it also has a policy implication upon its enforcement in January 2025.
So at the beginning, you said that in your title slide, it mentioned something about information environment. So how does that fit into your story?
Yes, okay. So because in my paper there's 2 parts. First one is descriptive part where I look at, actually I'm going to touch upon that in the institutional setting. So if you wait for a few slides, I'm going to come back to the slides. Your question? And the second contribution is that it could respond to the growing demand for understanding cryptocurrency market from stakeholders. And where in fact crypto assets can be arguably the only asset in the balance sheet that doesn't have intrinsic value. It has no association with tangible asset, and it doesn't have any. It is not backed up by authority. So, and a survey by Financial Conduct Authority and the WEPR shows that only 11% of retail investors have a good understanding of the asset, which resulting in crypto investors tend to exhibit holding behaviors. And even at the regulators level. Yes, please.
Please finish. I'll ask again.
Yes. Even at the regulatory levels, there is a limited understanding of how these assets is managed within institutions, which resulted in their inability to detect faults in the early stage in the serial failures of cryptocurrency exchange in 2022.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask where this definition of crypto comes from, and what is the difference between cryptocurrency and crypto asset within the scope of this paper?
I would say I would use it interchangeably for the crypto asset and cryptocurrency.
Okay. And where does the definition of crypto come from? Because you said there, for example, it has no intrinsic value, no backup authority, and no type of physical assets. But that's a very specific definition, I would say. And you could classify it in a different way. So I was wondering where you get it, if it's from one of the regulations that you're looking at, if it's the FASB that provides this definition.
Yeah, well actually the definition of cryptocurrency, I get it from, I think, a financial source, but it's actually one specific because I would just want to emphasize that it doesn't have intrinsic value, which is a key point here. Why? Because it doesn't have intrinsic value. Its value of price is mainly driven by market sentiment. And I would say in the balance sheet, it can be also on the asset that doesn't have intrinsic value initially. So for example, the financial contract, I received this feedback. But as I said, cryptocurrency is different because the financial contract or financial derivatives, they also attach to a certain underlying asset, whereas cryptocurrency, they have no association with any physical or tangible assets. Yeah.
Thank you.
I hope I answered your
So
question.
it's your concern that there are now so many different cryptocurrencies that some will not.
Yes, yes. For example, particularly the part on, or if we look specifically at the no backup authority, right, the decentralization. I think there are probably some cryptocurrencies. Cryptocurrencies depend what you want to classify as cryptocurrencies that are centralized. This is a specific definition of cryptocurrency. I was just wondering if it came from FASB or some other particular entity that is referenced in the paper. That was my
Actually, it's a
question.
very good question. Thank you. I actually have clarified in the beginning. Yes. So actually, there are different types of cryptocurrency. And for example, within the scope of MNSB, it just covers certain asset to the exclusion of, for example, stable coins. Because in some cases, stable coins can be treated as financial asset because it gives rise to the holding entity. It also doesn't include wrap coins, which essentially pegs the value of crypto asset to another digital asset. Or it doesn't also include the initial coin offerings, the coin which is issued by the reporting entities. So within the scope, I would say that fall within the scope of MSB, the mainstream digital asset.
Thank you.
Just building on the prior points. So, like in the definition here, would you need to mention the word blockchain? Would that be important? Like in your definition, does the crypto asset need to go on blockchain?
Oh yes. So it should be secure by cryptographic codes and also be created in the blockchain chain. But sorry for my oversight, I should have put it here.
So just a suggestion about the expression. I think that for the statement, I would just say the understanding cryptocurrencies from various stakeholders.
Yeah.
When you say it's a crypto market, I think you remind people something about, say, crypto exchanges. So people might think that you're going to study the disclosure of those crypto exchanges. Because here, really, it's the holdings of crypto assets by companies. Right? And then the stakeholders really is the shareholders or potential investors. So it's really just to understand the crypto assets themselves and not the market per se. I guess you don't really learn anything from those disclosures about the markets per se.
Okay, Liz, I will change the wording. Thank you for the suggestion. And therefore, in response to the growing demand for understanding assets or how to account for these assets, Matt Baker tried to narrow the gap by first providing a descriptive of different companies that are involved in crypto business. And then second, I look at how cryptocurrencies are being used by the companies. So just a very brief summary. So besides being used as a long-term investment, cryptocurrency can also be used as a means of compensation or as a collateral for loan, or also can be used as a derivatives asset by the company. And lastly, which is the focus of my paper, I focus on how these companies account for and report the cryptocurrency in their financial statements, which speaks to the variation that the regulators fail to see in the past 2 years. And lastly, my paper also contributes to the established literature of corporate governance. As I mentioned earlier, there's currently no accounting standards for cryptocurrency until January 2025. So the decision to disclose cryptocurrency is still voluntary and strategic by managers. And we do not know yet how investors would react to these disclosures. So So understanding this relationship would help also managers to make more informed decisions about the capital structure, better strategize the crypto holding and disclosures to align with their financial objectives, and overall it would also improve the efficiency of the corporate governance. Yes, and I want to go back to your question earlier about institutional setting, about why it fits in my title of information environment or cryptocurrency. So this is one part that I was looking at. I'm looking at the variation in the accounting practice by company, and as you can see, the number of companies is actually increasing, starting from 2 companies in 2014 to 53 companies in 2023. It's still quite nascent, but I expect, as I mentioned in the motivation, that more companies will be involved in this industry in the coming years. And as you can see, before 2018, most of the companies use fair value, as indicated by the light green here, as consistent with the treatment of cash equivalent, and foreign currency. However, after 2018, companies switched to intangible asset accounting, which essentially requires company to measure the crypto asset at initial cost, and then they have to conduct the impairment test annually or more frequently if needed. And in case the book value of crypto asset falls below the fair value or market value of the asset, an impairment loss is recognized, and company have to write down the book value to the market value. And in subsequent periods, if the fair value or market value go up, the company are not allowed to report the upward reversal until the asset is sold. Okay, so essentially this method is only trying to reflect the downsides or decreases of asset, but not the upwards. And in 2023, there's a bigger subset of companies switching to fair value because they act as the early adopters of the regulation. This regulation is actually effective in 2025, but companies have an option to only adopt when it's ready, when they're ready.
Do you know, so for those who do fair value, and nobody specifically looked for this, do they all do level 1?
Yes, so essentially these companies, they mainly hold Bitcoin. So
Bitcoin, okay, so then there's no problem. Okay.
I'm just wondering, what are these companies? Because there's just so few of them, you probably can list them. Do you know which companies they are? Are they financials?
I do know. Like actually, my sample construction would be that I think I'll go in a few slides. But I was scanning for the whole financial markets and then search for the crypto-related words mentioned by company. And then from this company, I would look at whether or not they hold and disclose their crypto information. So I have information for this company.
It's like MicroStrategy, software, Tesla.
Yeah, and then because I just usually just look what this company report is like.
Yes, but if I'm not a company, is there any other test that I can do? Because actually, okay, yeah, probably.
So, I guess after these rules, regulations are applied,
Yeah.
this number may jump up significantly. This number may jump
Yes.
up significantly. So
Yes.
you've already got 50 now, there might be actually 500 firms that are involved in it.
Yes, especially I think after the victory of Donald Trump, which he really promotes cryptocurrency, I expect this thing to further increase if I further expand my sample size to the more recent year. But because, first of all, because I started this project last year and I was constrained to the sample size at the end of 2023, but I could also expand the sample size.
I would definitely, like after the regulation, I would definitely collect more data
Yeah.
and just try to do it fast before anyone else.
Yes.
So you have public companies in there, right? And they would have audit reports that would discuss key audit matters and things like that. Do auditors say anything about companies holding cryptocurrency? I mean, I understand that there's materiality kind of thresholds, but is that a concern for the auditors at all?
Yes, well, there are 2 papers from auditing that actually look at the impact of holding cryptocurrency on the auditing. But actually, I don't think they look at the opinions of the auditor, but they look at, for example, auditing fee and then like the dispersion in the audit opinions, I would say. And they find that companies that hold cryptocurrency actually increase auditing fee as expected
just more thinking that the auditors might be driving some of the disclosure.
Oh, okay.
So that might be a driver
Oh,
in
okay.
your setting.
I can also look at the auditor's opinion in the annual report because it's not much of the company, so we'll see if it's also like a variation.
So can I have a question? Because obviously this sample, because there's not yet associated regulated, it's all self-selected, so which is like really problematic. My question is, do companies stick to reporting if they start reporting? So if you start reporting in 2016-17 that you have cryptocurrency, do you keep reporting for the next years, or you just pick and choose, or report today because it's like, yeah, nice, it looks nice on my balance sheet, and then I don't report next year?
Yeah, so actually company did change their accounting charts for cryptocurrency, especially those starting reporting in 2014. Most of the company, well actually only two company, but in 2017 there are more, but most of them use fair value. But at 2018, because actually there was some voluntary guidance from Big Four company and AIPCA that says that cryptocurrency may fall into the category of intangible asset, and this company actually managed to switch to intangible assets.
And do they sometimes just drop reporting of it completely?
That happens with the company going bankrupt, and I did see the dropping observation of the company during my example size. So
No, but what I mean is the company is still there, but it reported in 1 year, but it doesn't report in another year.
they
So they stick to this, it's not happening. They change the accounting method, but they don't stop reporting.
don't, yes, they continue. So not only does the company exhibit variation in the accounting choice, but they also vary in the level of information that they disclose. So in this paper, I specifically look at whether or not this variation affect how investor reacts to the company. So on the one hand, there's a quite established literature in accounting that says if the company enhances disclosure, it could enhance transparency, which means that investors now have more resources to evaluate the crypto holding as well as the company performance. And specifically in the case of cryptocurrency, it is quite a unique asset with a lot of more potential risk, but at the same time also have more potential opportunity for investing. So there's more demand for understanding what would be the risk and returns of this asset. And lastly, disaggregating information would not only provide more granular information, but also give managers fewer leeway to manipulate the reporting number, and therefore would enhance the credibility of the financial reports. However, on the other hand, cryptocurrency information, because it's quite new in nascent, is quite complex and often difficult to understand. Therefore, enhanced disclosure for cryptocurrency may increase the time consuming and costly for investors, and also because of the involving regulation. As you can see, the accounting choice for cryptocurrency is still voluntary. With the currently adopted method, which is the intangible asset, being criticized that it doesn't reflect the economics of the asset because it only reflects the downsides, not the upwards. So this chart essentially shows the comparison between the reported numbers under the intangible accounting and the inferred fair value that the company voluntarily disclosed. So as you can see, there's a huge divergence between the reported number under the current practice and the inferred fair value, with only the exception in 2022 where we have like zero failures of cryptocurrency.
So in your analysis, do you differentiate different groups of investors, primarily say sophisticated investors versus retail and unsophisticated investors, because clearly they have a different demand for information. They also have a different processing cost when it comes to the availability of information.
Yes. Okay. So essentially, for the baseline test, I just focus on the whole market, which is I think believe is a retail investors. But in the robotic test, I control for the sophisticated by using the analyst recommendation, and I also find a similar result.
So you say
Oh.
you view the market as a whole as a retail investors?
No, actually in the baseline tests, I test market reaction using just the daily stock returns. But in the robotic test,
a mix of all sorts of investors.
Yeah.
But somehow you have an additional test.
Yeah, I
focused
do
on
have the robotic test to control for the analyst recommendation and the disclosure. And I do find that the company with higher disclosure quality have less dispersion and more favorable analyst revision in their recommendation. the unique characteristic of cryptocurrency, which doesn't have intrinsic value. As I mentioned earlier, its price is mainly driven by market sentiment, which can also overshadow or subsume the role of cryptocurrency disclosure at the time of announcements. So altogether, these contracting arguments lead me to propose the null hypothesis that investors do not react to the increased information on cryptocurrency. So before we jump into the empirical part, this is a little bit just to summarize my research design. So in the conceptual level, we have enhanced could also improve investor wealth by reducing information asymmetry. And in the operational level, I proxy for the transparency using the disclosure score constructed based on the information required by the FASB, and I proxy for investor wealth by studying their reaction to this disclosure. And then I follow the prior literature controlling for specific characteristics, but I add 3 more control variables, which is specific in my case. The first one is the financial exposure to cryptocurrency, which essentially the proportion of crypto holding relative to total assets. Second is the informational exposure to cryptocurrency, which is the number of times that the company mentioned crypto-related words in the annual report. And lastly, because it was previously documented that Bitcoin performance also affects how market reacts to blockchain related business, so I also control for Bitcoin performance in my regression.
Now, can I go back to my first question, where the information environment is? The way I see it, well, if you just look at the disclosure, particular disclosure, it's a value story in itself. And the usual notion of information environment is the environment. Now, if you are saying because of this disclosure of cryptocurrency somehow it affects the information environment, I guess it can be, but seems rather marginally. And it just the notion of information environment is really the overall information environment that people look at to see the production of the analysts and the overall disclosure of the company. So I would say the way you frame your research question and just set the stage, it will be much just focused and the target just say that you study the disclosure of the cryptocurrency because the concurrent issue and the temporary, there's a lot of challenges. There's no literature. That's a very valid way to motivate and to frame your research question.
Okay, yes, so I will have to look at the reframing of my research. Because actually in this paper, I mainly focus on the disclosure of cryptocurrency. But
Yes, the particular disclosure.
Yeah.
So you don't really need to reference to information environment because then you will remind the readers, the audience, the everything besides.
Okay, thank you.
It's really about just changing the title, yes, because there's no information environment in the story, not significant enough.
You don't need to rewrite the whole paper, it's just actually the title.
Yes, so in my sample construction, I first download the 10K from Laura and McDonald during the first scanning of companies that potentially involved in crypto business. And then I use the crypto-related words for my first scanning. And then afterwards, I would go to ECRA to extract accounting information specifically related to cryptocurrency. I extract stock advice from Yahoo Finance, mainly because the crypto company in my sample is relatively small. So
just a question. So you identify keywords and you look at the companies in your 10Ks. What do you look?
yes. So my first scan is I look at the 10K related words in the crypto related words in 10K using the text database from Laura and McDonald. And I would have this whole sample, like 2,000 companies. And then I would go to Edgar and search for this company if they actually hold and disclose cryptocurrency information. And then I extract the stock price data from Yahoo Finance, as I said, because my company is quite small and some of the company is not included by CRIPS, which leads to like unnecessary drop in observation. And then I extract full financial data from WorldScope and analyst forecast and recommendation from INS. And my sample size span from 2014 to 2023. And the final sample includes 55 companies which have data available from 4 sources.
And these are basically crypto mining companies and exchange operators kind of stuff.
Yes, actually, later on I will put it in reference the distribution of the company, but they essentially have mining firms, firms that invest in cryptocurrency, and also firms that also offered crypto-related products. So, for example, they developed app to exchange the cryptocurrency. Okay.
I'm sorry. Just ask something. I'm quite enthusiastic learning all the new fact right here. I'd like to think, one is before the new regulation, so usually what are the public companies' general practice on disclosing this, their holding, if they invest in the cryptocurrency? What are the options? What were the options before any regulation? For example, if you invest in cryptocurrency, do they hide in assets side? They can use whatever valuation measure, they can just put somewhere. We are completely not in something like that, or what was it? Before the regulation, yeah.
Yes, so before the regulation, of course, the company have the choice to either disclose or not disclose, or like which, if they disclose, which method they choose to disclose.
The disclose meaning I explicitly say I hold Bitcoin, how many shares of this, and how many of this, whatever crypto. Right? Is this definition of disclose?
Yes.
And also disclose the exact value and that for the fair valuation method.
Maybe intentions, right?
Intentional, yes, it's a static choice of the investors, of the managers.
Yeah.
That's why I think it's quite important to look at that thing, because given that they have the choice and the discretion to disclose and look at the variation of how this, that's why I think when the regulation actually comes into effect, companies, they all have to disclose certain information, and it reduces the variation in the level of information. So we do not yet know whether or not how investors will react to this information, because essentially companies are required to disclose the same amount of information.
Just for my sake, historically there was no guidance. So you have this stancing of your sample. There are a few firms they do fair value.
Yeah.
But then you see the switch to intangibles. Well, was there some guidance issue?
There's some guidance from Big Four and AS.
Okay, and then as a result of that, many started following accounting for intangibles. So this is historical cost, yeah, with what was very good. Now there's this sort of again the switch towards fair value as mandated by the standards.
Yeah.
And I think coming back to your point, all those crypto miners, can you actually see them in this graph that you've shown us? Because they must be classifying crypto assets as an inventory, right?
Yes, so they would classify it as a current asset, but they would specify it as not inventory, but digital asset.
Under current. Okay.
By mining companies, so they don't. I thought that would treat that as inventory as well. That it literally is their production, right?
Yes, yes. Yes, it's part of inventory, but they didn't put the inventory, but they put the line item as intangible, as digital asset, but in the current section.
So you can have okay. So this okay. So it's both inventory and intangibles for miners.
Yeah. So in this regression, I learned to study the relevance of crypto disclosure. The dependent variable, I use an absolute cumulative annual return using the market model on over the 4-day window, 2 days before and 1 day after the event of the announcement date. And as I said earlier, I construct a disclosure quality based on the 7 items required by the FASB. So just to quickly go into how I construct the variable for CleanSpark. So first we have a list of line item here, and as I said earlier, I would also add the frequency of impairment test here for the robotic test later on. So this is the balance sheet of the CleanSpark, and we can see that they also disclose Bitcoin at the respective value here. So we have asset name, which is the Bitcoin, and also the cost basis, which is reported in the balance sheet. Next, in the income statement, the companies actually recognize the realized gain of Bitcoin, and also one few line items above, they also recognize the other expense related to Bitcoin. So here they tick the box of recognizing gain and loss in the income statement. And next, they also specifically disclose how many coins they hold for the year ending 2023. So here they also disclose the quantity held.
And the business model of the company is like,
I'm sorry.
The business model of the company is what? The mining company?
This is the mining company.
So they do, but doesn't mine Bitcoin or does actually mine
They
Bitcoin?
do mine Bitcoin, and they
But they
actually.
show it separately from, they do have a line of inventory, but presumably that's something different.
Yeah, that's yeah. And this is like the notes for the Bitcoin is quite long, but I'm just going through here. So the company actually disclosed the accounting charts, which is less impairments, and then they conduct impairment tests at each reporting period, so it's going to be quarterly. And lastly, the company used the first in first out accounting method for computing gains and loss. So combining all together, we have accounting charts, frequency of impairment testing, and also cost for cryptocurrency transaction. So the disclosure score for this company would be 6 in event tests and then 6.6 for the unit test, if I control also for the impairment testing. Okay, and then after constructing the disclosure quality, I add control variables, and the coefficient of interest is B1. So if disclosure is relevant, I could expect a significant and positive effect. So I'll just quickly show you the regression results here. I found that disclosure is actually relevant because it shows significant and positive coefficient. But more notably, I find that in this regression, Bitcoin performance is actually significantly and even to a high extent to influence market reaction. Just to illustrate, here I've just blocked the quarterly average Bitcoin return on together with the average, the abnormal return and cumulative abnormal return. And as you can see, there's a strong positive correlation between Bitcoin returns and CAR, especially after 2020, where Bitcoin is actually more widely adopted and utilized.
Can you explain the underlying construct, this Bitcoin return you try to catch?
Oh, this one is actually the quarterly average Bitcoin return versus the quarterly CAR of the company.
Not a measurement, the economic constructs.
Oh, okay.
What we can interpret this Bitcoin returns in your analysis, in your previous analysis, in your regression.
Yeah. So there would be two implications, I could say. The first one is that we know that now Bitcoin performance actually has significant influence over market reaction to company. And second, it speaks to the concerns of right now the proportion of crypto holding by company is quite insignificant, less than 10%, right? And it speaks to the significance of cryptocurrency, because even though it accounts for a small portion of crypto assets, it still significantly affects and correlates with the market perception of that company.
How does it fit into your disclosure story?
Oh,
Are you
yeah.
trying to interrupt?
It's not fitting in my disclosure, but I'm trying to speak to the significance of crypto investment, right?
It probably should be placed somewhere else.
Well, I just try to understand, because your paper is about the disclosure of cryptocurrency. So, of course, the Bitcoin return only may be overall indication of the crypto market, and that has some bearing of how the investor reacted to your cryptocurrency disclosure. So, in that sense, maybe you can frame it in that way, so that it is like a coherent story. And then, it's an interesting fact, but it has to somehow fit into the bigger picture. That's all I can say.
And how high is the correlation?
How high is the correlation? I didn't put in the table, but I would expect it's more than 50%.
Okay.
Okay, so I want to touch upon this thing because obviously it's like a voluntary disclosure by company, and my regression results may suffer from two endogenous problems. The first one is that the announcement date is predetermined by company, and therefore it makes it possible for the managers to manipulate the valuation of disclosure with the analyst forecast. And second, disclosure, especially in this case is voluntary, is typically an endogenous choice of managers. And if I fail to include one of the variables that can affect disclosure choice and market reaction, my regression result will suffer from cognitive variable bias. So in order to resolve this endogeneity problem, I take advantage of the collapse of the FTX exchange, which happened in November 2022. And this collapse is actually offering me a several units features to isolate the effect of disclosure. The first one is that the tapping of this collapse is not expected by either firms or investors. So as you can see from the chart, here it shows the trading volume of Bitcoin from September to December 2022. And on the day of the collapse, actually this is a spike in the trading volume. So it's typically indicates a panic selling or rebalancing of the portfolios of these investors. And the second, the severe consequences of the collapse, which so the FTX collapse were used to be considered as the safest trading platform for cryptocurrency, but its collapse really eroded trust and confidence of crypto investors in the cryptocurrency market. So therefore, in this case, I would expect that the disclosure quality can help to restore trust and confidence back in the currency market. And lastly, although the disclosure is a virtuous choice of managers, the sudden and short-time nature of the event can allow me to treat the disclosure as given in the short run, which is 1 day after the event.
I think like another way you could alleviate these endogeneity concerns would be companies being studying, like show how much of the assets are actually in Bitcoins. Because if it's, like less than 1%, investors probably don't care that much how well, 1% of the assets is disclosed. If it's something like 50%, then I would start
materiality of
yeah.
Okay. Yeah, but actually I also control for the materiality of holding in every reflection that I
But if it's all like 1 or 2%,
yeah.
like I don't think if investors looking at the whole 10K, you're not going to be like, oh, thank God they disclose well on this really small asset, reward them with a high market reaction.
Yes.
Like, what is the mean, like, crypto assets or total assets ratio?
Yeah, so the mean of crypto ratio is around 10%, but the lowest one is 3%, and the highest one is currently being MicroStrategy at 88%.
Okay, well, I think 10% is economic risk. The main, at the start of your presentation, maybe mention these statistics.
Oh, okay. Yes.
Because my prior was that, like, this is like a
1%.
tiny fraction.
This comes back to my original question, what are these companies which you're looking at, yeah? Because my primary view of all companies, I think maybe now, using a bit of crypto, to move money around, like, I'm pretty sure that Apple will use crypto, or the production companies. But if there is such a big fraction of assets in crypto, it's probably financial or crypto specialized companies. So then, for them, then you have a different kind of storage out there. It's like, then for them, this all becomes kind of relevant, whether you disclose this, how good you disclose this. And that's why I should ask, can you just look at the names of the companies so few? So do you know which industry they are? Are they all financials?
Well, actually, they're not all financials, but some of them are financials company. Actually, in my example, I don't include financial company because if the company actually trades on Bitcoin, which they hold significant amount of Bitcoin, they have to report Bitcoin at fair value, which is not in the scope of my paper.
Okay.
Yeah. But for example, MicroStrategy, they have significant amount of Bitcoin, but they still classify as investing company in Bitcoin.
Okay. Yeah, but I think you should really look, again, because there's several so small, into what is the, I would say, core business of the company,
Okay.
So, and then if it's core business of the company, then you will know how the Bitcoin potentially may be used and why does the point to disclose it. If it's just a speculative thing on the side, it's one thing. If it's something which allows you to, I don't know, if you use it as a means of payment, it's another thing.
Oh, yes. So more in the distribution of the company.
Yeah, so just, again, because several so small, I think it's very important that you understand this because it's such a small sample, even though it's like several years. So many results may be driven by outliers, basically.
Yeah, okay. Yes, well actually in the probability test, I actually exclude MicroStrategy because actually the proportion of holding of them is too huge, so probably they cause a lot of bias, but the results still remain the same, that more disclosure by the rest of the companies to trigger significant market reaction.
one thing you might try also to run a median regression. There is a total regression of the medians. So, and basically I realized that if you replicate many studies in corporate finance, instead of normal orders regression by the median regression, all the key results disappear. So basically, all the results are driven in very well set papers by a small block of outliers. So the median didn't, so if I median regression, see if now you show that this happens an average firm, like the sample very small. So if you run median regression, the same thing, you'll see whether you get the same positive and significant effect on the median firm in your sample.
All right. Yes. Yes. I understand.
And then if you see there, so then it's just it's quite robust. It's not really driven by common curve with that particular digital lines.
Yeah. Thank you for your suggestion. I think I'm a bit
Do you have 5 minutes?
After
Just
5 minutes.
quick
Yes.
thing, just to think about it.
Yes.
I think before that event that you showed the graph, there was a series of events around May, June. Basically, the collapse of loan and the hedge funds that were exposed to it. So it was like 70 billion out of this market.
Oh, you mean like in the critical? Yeah. So it's
Exactly. So some people say this was like the first shock that led to the FTX collapse.
Oh.
So something to say. Just think about it.
Yes, yes. I also thought about that, but maybe we can discuss after the presentation because I think I'm running a bit out of time. But essentially, what I'm trying to look at here is that post is 1 day after the collapse, and then I used benchmark window of 50 days before. Market outcome, I proxy for the daily stock returns and the daily beta spread for the information asymmetry. And disclosure is actually still the disclosure quality from the nearest fiscal year. So in this sample, I showed that in the 1 day after the collapse, the stock markets for the companies that are involved in cryptocurrency actually decreased, and the level of information asymmetry spiked. But for the company that have higher quality disclosure, the effect is less severe. So compared to the average population, company with higher stock quality have higher stock market returns and lower level of information asymmetry. So it speaks to the importance of disclosure quality in this case. And I think this is one last point I want to make. So essentially, people would argue that because of this insignificant of cryptocurrency holding, maybe the reaction that I capture here is stemming from the fact that the company hold crypto rather than its disclosure, right? And in order to control for this scenario, first I control for the actual or financial exposure to cryptocurrency, and I find that whereas crypto holding has a negative and significant impact on the market reaction, the interaction between disclosure quality and crypto holding shows a marginal positive and significant impact. So it indicates the fact that as the company increases the crypto holding, the relevance and usefulness of disclosure actually also increase. Okay, and in order
So
to
that's actually
Yes.
yeah.
And second, to confirm this finding, I run another test, which is to compare between market reaction to crypto holding companies and then non-holding counterparts. I created the control group using the propensity matching score to make sure that the control group operates in the same industry and shares similar financial characteristics. And my finding from the matching process gives the result that there is no significant reaction between crypto holding company and then non-holding counterparts. And to
Sorry, I don't ask any question. How do you measure crypto holdings also from their disclosure?
Crypto holding, okay, so because if they hold cryptocurrency, they could disclose the number of holding in the balance sheet. So in that case, if the company recognizes the crypto in the balance sheet, I could classify those companies as holding company.
Okay, so what I was saying that, but you could have, because it's not compulsory, you can hold crypto but don't disclose this.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's, okay.
In that scenario, I control for that in my first screening process, which essentially I would use the crypto-related words, and then after that, I would go to Edgar for each of the company that are mentioning cryptocurrency and see if they actually hold and disclose company holds cryptocurrency.
How is it done in there?
Oh, yes.
You
So
change-
holding in this case is like a continuous one because it speaks to the fraction of crypto holding, but print is a domain, whereas the company holding not.
And just come back to your point, because it's, regardless of whether there's any specific requirement or not, firms still must disclose information that's relevant for decision makers if it's material, right? So you would, sort of they can't just hide information, they have a significant